Okay, I think we'll start our last session for today. Sir, okay. So I'd like to invite Dr. A.K. Lohani. He has expertise in hydrological modeling. He has done a lot of case studies using various hydrological models. He's also expertise in stochastic modeling, soft computing techniques. For climate change studies, you'll be needing a lot of statistical methods. And today, Dr. Lohani will give you an introduction of various statistical analysis or statistical methods that are available and can be used for climate change studies. I'm sure you'll find all of these techniques handy for your impact assessment studies. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Dr. A.K. Lohani. Sir, you can please start your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sunil. I'll just start. 1 second. Okay, I'm going to talk about the statistical analysis in climate change studies. So I'll be talking basics about the statistics and the most common method which are being used in the climate change studies. Okay. So when we are working on the climate change studies, we are doing on that. So first question comes that in the climate change studies, where do you begin? Okay. How you begin the climate change studies? Okay. So the starting point, if you see in the climate change studies, one thing is, first of all, you gather the climatic data. Okay. Basically, your purpose is you want to see whether the climate is changing or not. What is the impact of that one? So all this is basically you have to have the sufficient data for that. So first of all, you try to collect the climatological data. And then from those climatological data, you uncover the trends, whether there is some trend is there in the data or not. And then you have to predict the future changes. What are the future changes? So these are the basically in the climate change studies, we just want to see whether in the climate something has changed, some change has taken place in the past, or in future what changes are going to take place. So we want to see all those things. So one thing is that when we are talking about the temperature, okay, just you want to see whether the change in temperature is taking place or some changes are there in the temperature, okay, due to climate change. Okay, so typically what we do, we identify the global temperature. And global temperature, how we identify? We identify by anomaly instead of an absolute value. We don't go for the absolute value. We go for an anomaly. Okay. Why we don't go for the absolute value? The fact is that you have the few weather stations. They are not evenly distributed throughout the planet. Okay. There are certain areas have the different elevation than others. Okay. So that's why what we do, we never go for an absolute temperature. We go for the anomaly. Okay. And then the anomaly will account for the climate variability. These anomalies we use to account for the climate variability. That is the basically we do. Okay. The term basically the term temperature anomaly, what is that? It means basically it is the difference from an average or a baseline temperature. Okay. It's a positive anomaly indicate that the observed temperature was warmer than the baseline temperature, while a negative anomaly indicates that the observed temperature was cooler than the baseline. So how do you calculate the anomaly? Suppose we have the 30 years of the temperature data. Okay. Suppose I have the 30 years of global temperature data, and just I'll take the average of these 30 years of the data. Okay. Then I have the average temperature values. Now just subtract these average temperature values from the absolute values. Okay. So the values is, suppose the average values is or the baseline value is the 15 degrees centigrade. Okay. And the temperature on a particular area is the 17 degree. So 17 minus 15, we say that the plus 2. And if it is 14 degree, we say that 15 minus 14 minus 15 means -1. So it's a -1 degree from the baseline or +2 degree from the baseline or the average value. So these are the anomalies. So we compute the anomalies. Okay. So if these anomalies are the positive side, if it is coming in the positive side, we say that it is going to for the warmer side, and if the anomalies are in the negative side, we say that it's the temperature is in the cooler side. Okay. So this way we compute the anomalies. So these are the basic terminologies in the climate change studies. Now another thing is that once you have the series, either it's hydrologic series or the meteorological series, either you are going for the analysis of the temperature, you are going for analyzing the impact of the rainfall because of the climate change. Okay, so either you are going for the meteorological series, then either or the discharge series, the hydrological series. So that depends on the series, may be the continuous series or it may be a discrete series. Okay. In the discrete series, they may be the equidistant series or the non-equidistant series. And the terminology, another terminology is the outcome. Outcome is the single series element, and the realization is the set of outcomes. And another terminology comes the ensemble. Ensemble means the set of all possible outcomes. So the set of all possible outcomes, we call it as a ensemble. Now, your hydrological processes may be the deterministic processes or the stochastic processes. So the deterministic processes are functional equations define the process for the entire time of its existence. And each new observation does not represent new information. And if it is a stochastic process, it evolves entirely or in part according to a random mechanism. So here in case of the stochastic processes, elements are dependent, non-pure random, and elements are independent, then they are called the pure random. Okay, so if they are dependent, we call it a non-pure random. If they are independent, we call them as a pure random element in the stochastic processes. Now, once you have the data sets, okay, so how you will describe the data sets? So one is the graphical representation of the data, and if you represent your data set through graphical representations, so there are certain measures are there. One is the central tendency, then the dispersion, then the asymmetry, peakedness, percentiles, box plot, covariance, and correlation coefficient. Now, here the measure of central tendency is the mean. Mean we calculate, then it's simply the average of all the data sets in the series. Then the median is the middle value of the ranked sample. So whatever the value is coming, if you put all the values in the ascending or descending order, and the middle value we call it as a median. And for
the slide is not be visible.
Hello.
The slide is not be visible.
The slide is visible. Who is having this?
It is not visible, yeah.
Yes, sir. It's
Slide is visible or not visible?
Yeah, it is visible. Not visible, yeah.
Yeah.
It is visible, side. Please go ahead.
It's visible, okay. And for symmetrical distribution, if your distribution is symmetrical, in that case, median is equal to mean. Okay, so that means the median and mean are falling at the same point in symmetrical distribution. Then another terminology is the mode. So mode is the most frequent values, where derivatives of the frequency distribution is 0. That we call it as a mode. Then another measure of dispersion is the range. Range means the data basically spreads from minimum values to the maximum values. So we subtract x maximum minus x minimum. So that is we call it as a range. So suppose if I talk about the temperature values, so my temperature is varying from 2 degrees centigrade to 46 degrees centigrade. So range is 46 minus 2, that is the 44 is the range of, so that dispersion, measure of dispersion of the range is R is equal to 46 minus 2, that is 44. So my range is, temperature range is 44. Then another terminology called as variance. Okay, variance we defined as means what we do in case of the variance. So what from the value we just subtract the mean. Okay, from any data set we subtract the mean. So this once we subtract the mean, xi minus m is the mean value. Okay, so once we subtract the mean value from the data set, so this value may be either negative or positive. To just remove the sign negative or positive, we make it as a square. So all the deviation from the mean, we take the square of that one, then we add all these deviations. Okay, then divide by n minus 1, we call it as a variance. So this is the variance, and the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So once we have the square root of this variance, we call it as a standard deviation. Okay, so s is equal to square root of 1 upon n minus 1, I is equal to 1 to n xi minus m whole square. Then the another terminology is the coefficient of variation. Coefficient of variation is Cv is equal to s divided by m. Once we divide by the mean, we call it as a coefficient of variation. Now, for m is equal to 0, Cv is undefined. Okay, if your mean is m value is 0, then in that case coefficient of variation is undefined. Then another terminology is called as a skewness. Okay, means you have heard the terminology that your distribution is skewed towards right, skewed towards left, okay, or unskewed. So skewness is computed by this, that is called the third central moment, and scaled by s cube. Okay, so it's n upon n minus 1 and into n minus 2 and sigma xi minus m whole cube. So here in this case, what we are doing, instead of square of the difference, we just make cube of the difference. Okay, but we are taking the difference from the mean, difference of each value from the mean, and just giving the cube of that value. Okay, and then summing up all those things, and then we are computing. So that is called the skewness. So that is that sometimes we call it as a third moment, third central moment. Now you just see where the mean, median, and mode are lying. Okay, just see the location of these 3 points: mean, median, and mode. And the sign of skewness, whatever the skewness, it's this skewness sign may be the positive or negative. So if it is positive, we can say it's basically right skewed, and negative, then it is the left skewed. So here in this case, you just see pictorially your positive skewness. So this distribution is the positive skewness. So in this case, you just see this is the mode, means the highest frequency of the data. This is the median, then this is the mean. Okay, and this is skewed toward the right side. So positive skewness is there. Okay, so mean, median, and modes are falling at different places, right? Similarly, you can see the negative skewness or left side skewed data. Okay, this is the mode, highest frequency is here. So this is the mode, this is the median, this is the mean of the data, and this is left skewed. Okay, so this skewness basically, whether it's a left skewed or right skewed, that you can find out from the coefficient of skewness also you can find out. Now in this case, this is a symmetrical distribution. Okay, in case of the symmetrical distribution, your skewness is 0. Skewness value comes as 0, and all the 3 mode, median, and mean, they fall at the same point. Okay, and it is basically symmetrical on both sides. Okay, so we call it as a symmetrical distribution. Now another terminology is the measure of peakedness, means your distribution, how peak is that, whether it's a flat or it's peaked. So we call it as a fourth central moment. Okay, so this is basically fourth central moment has the fourth power. So here xi minus m to the power 4th. So this we call it as a fourth central moment. Okay, here. So normal distribution, in case of the normal distribution, your kurtosis value is 3. So we call this measure of peakedness called as kurtosis, and the kurtosis, when the kurtosis value is 3, that means it's a normal distribution. Okay, so and it is called as a mesocurtic distribution. Otherwise, if your kurtosis is greater than 3, we call it as a leptokurtic distribution. So that means if mode G2 is your kurtosis is greater than 3, that means it is having a sharper peak. Okay. And when your kurtosis value is less than 3, it is having the flatter peak. Platykurtic distribution we call, and it's a flatter peak. And in case of the normal distribution, the your kurtosis value is 3. Okay. And here we compute as axis coefficient as whatever the kurtosis minus 3, we call it as a axis coefficient. So here in this figure, you can just see kurtosis in comparison to the normal distribution. Okay. It's a leptokurtic G2 or the kurtosis is greater than 3. Normal, your kurtosis is 3. And when it's flatter, okay, platykurtic, its kurtosis is less than 3. So if you know the value of the kurtosis, from the value of the kurtosis, you will be able to know what kind of distribution, what is the shape of the distribution, whether it's a flat distribution, it's going to the normal distribution type, or it is going to the peak distribution. So this way you can just compare the type of distribution. So basically, if you see in the climate change, what you are doing, you have the lots of data sets. Okay, from the data sets, you are just seeing the behavior of how it is behaving. Okay, so all kinds of statistical analysis you do carry out using these data sets. Then another terminology is the quantiles. XP is equal to PF quantile. So value that is greater than 100 percentile of all data sets. Okay, so Fx is equal to X less than equal to XP is equal to P. So here in this case, division of the frequency axis is equal parts. So what we do, division of the frequency axis in equal parts. So 100 equal parts is called the percentile, 10 equal parts we call it as a decile, and the 4 equal parts we call it as a quartile. Now we go for the box and whisker plot. You might have seen a number of box and whisker plots, so I'll just define what is that. Box plot basically display of the 3 quartiles, x 0.25, x 0.5, and x 0.75. So box and whisker plot also defines the minimum and maximum values. Okay. Sometimes also mean is also displayed. So basically this box and whisker plot defines 5 to 6 point summary of the frequency distribution. So these plots, maybe you can define for the seasonal data set, for the yearly data set, okay, for the monthly data set, that depends what type of analysis you are carrying out. So accordingly, you select the data set and you can just plot the box and whisker plot, okay, and just using the box and whisker plot, you can define your data sets, because you just see, if you suppose if I have the 30 years of the temperature data or the 30 years of the rainfall data, so in one go defining various properties of the data set is very difficult. Okay, but using this box and whisker plot, if you are seeing the data set in the tabular form, you can't say much about the data sets. But if you plot all these data sets in the form of the box and whisker plot, you can just define various properties of the data sets. Like you just see box and whisker plot, if I plotted like this, so this box and whisker plot, what are the things it is showing? This point, it shows the minimum value of the data sets. Okay, and this, it shows the maximum value. Okay, and then this line shows the first quartile, means that means the 25th percentile value. Okay, and this one shows the third quartile, means the 75th percentile value. Okay, and here this plus sign, this shows the mean value. Okay, and this minus one, this shows that the median value, that means the second quartile or the 50th percentile. So here you just see, if you have plotted this box and whisker plot, if your mean and median are falling at the same point. Okay, so that means they have the symmetrical data set. Okay, from here only you can define so many things from the data sets. Okay, and depending on the length of this maximum and minimum. Okay, where these two fall. So from this plot itself, you can be able to define the what type of distribution or what type of data set is there. Okay, how much it is spread, what is the range of the data sets. Okay, all these things you can able to find out. So range you can have from here, this is the maximum values and the minimum values. So maximum minus minimum, you have the range, how much range is there in the data sets. Okay, if this total length is less, that means the range of the data set is smaller. Okay, so everything you will be able to find out only from this simple plots. Okay, box and whisker plot. Then the measure of linear association is there, covariance and the correlation coefficient. So covariance we defined by this equation, Cxy is equal to 1 upon n minus 1, I is equal to 1 to n, xi minus mx, yi minus y, my. Okay, with the data set in the x and y, you can just define what is the covariance. And similarly, correlation coefficient you can define by this equation, Rxy is equal to Cxy upon Sx Sy. So this Cxy is the covariance divided by the standard deviation of X series and the standard deviation of the Y series. Okay, or you can just define it like that, 1 upon n minus 1, I is equal to 1 to n, xi minus mx means the deviation of the X data sets from its mean into deviation of Y data sets from its mean. Okay, so and the product of these two deviations and divided by the standard deviation of the X and the standard deviation of Y, that is called the correlation coefficient. Okay. Now another thing is that what is the range of the correlation? What is the best value of the correlation coefficient? Can anybody tell me?
+1.
Hmm?
1.
1. So what is the range of correlation coefficient?
Minus
It
1.
varies from
-1 to 1.
1 to
-1 to 1.
-1 to 1. So what is meant by the -1?
It's negative correlation. Like if one series is increasing, then other series is decreasing.
Yeah, so negatively correlated. Okay, and 1 is the positively correlated, and 0,
No correlation.
no correlation. So I'll show you how it comes, how the range comes. You just see. So if you have the linear relation y is equal to a plus bx, okay, hence your my is equal to a plus b mx, okay, and your standard deviation sy square is equal to b square sx square, or sy is equal to absolute b sx. Okay, from this equation you can write this way, and your rxy, your coefficient of correlation from the previous equation, you can just write again 1 upon n minus 1. You just see our equation is like this, 1 upon n minus 1, I is equal to 1 to n, xi minus mx, yi minus my upon xx sy. Okay, so you can write it like that. Xi minus mx, okay, and in place of the yi minus my, okay, this term is yi minus my, you just like in place of the yi you can write a plus b xi, okay, yi minus my. In case of the my, you can write a plus b mx. So solve this one, this a will just cancel, you just take the common, this b you can take the common, okay, so this will b is coming here, so 1 upon n minus 1 sigma xi minus mx whole square, okay, and here sx sy was there, sy in place of the sy you can write the mod b sx, mod b sx, so this means mod b sx square, mod b sx square, and from this terminology the b and this terms is coming, so here if you see this term again sx square, so sx square and sx square, just cut these two, so the finally term is coming b upon mod b, okay. This modulus b is value b upon modulus b value is ranging from -1 to 1, so that means your rxy, your correlation coefficient is varying from the -1 to 1. So as you have mentioned that the negatively correlated means the value is -1, and if it's positively correlated, its value is +1. Now, if you make a scatter plot of the data sets. Okay. So from there, you can just find out the correlation between the data sets. So normally what happens once you are computing the correlation, always try to plot the data sets in a scatter form. Okay. Sometimes whatever the values you are getting, your correlation values you are getting, they may mislead you. Okay. So always you should have a scatter plot. So here you just see in this first figure, this X and Y, it shows a strong linear correlation between X and Y. Okay. In this case, X and Y, it shows that the no correlation between X and Y. Okay, X and Y are independent. In this case, you can get the spurious correlation. You just see one set of the data is here, one set of the data is here. So you have the spurious correlation. If you are not plotting the data, okay, simply you are computing the correlation, you will find that my correlation is very good, but it's a spurious correlation. Then another one is if you see no linear correlation is there. Okay, it's a circular type of data set is there. Okay, so X and Y are not independent. Okay, so here you just see, so a strong circular correlation is there in the data set. So first of all, once you are computing the correlation, you have to always go for the scatter plot also. So the spurious correlation, when we talk spurious correlation due to heterogeneous data or the clustering of the data, means the combining non-monsoon and the monsoon data. If you are combining, it may cause sometimes the spurious correlation. Series X and Y in each period fully uncorrelated, means MX and MY fall between the non-monsoon and the monsoon mean, and the sign of X minus MX, Y minus MY always positive for non-monsoon and monsoon period. And the strong correlation seems to be available, but predictive value in either monsoon or non-monsoon period is nil. So this basically causes the spurious correlation. And sometimes X, Y, and Z are uncorrelated. Spurious correlation, the plot of X versus Z versus Y versus Z will show non-zero correlation. Here, you just see. And for all equal coefficient of variation, R is equal to 0.5. So spurious correlation arises when dimensionless terms are used or standardized variables are used. So these are called the spurious correlation. Then another term called the symmetry and the skewness. So data, whatever the data you have, you may describe the data in terms of the symmetry or skewness. If the extreme value of the data set lie in the left of the mean or median, then the data is said to be the left skewed, as I showed earlier in the figure. Means if your extreme values of the data set, they are lying left side of the mean or median, then the data is left skewed. And if it falling, extreme values are falling in the right side, so then it is called the right skewed. Just see here, this is the right skewed, positively skewed data set. Long tail to the right, it is having the long tail to the right. Bulk of the data to the left of the mean, and the mean you just see is falling here. And here in case of the left skewed data set, you just see, or the negatively skewed, your data set means the lowest values are coming over here. Okay. So here you just see how the data is basically behaving. Then your symmetry takes different forms. It may be, the symmetry may be this one. Your symmetry may be this one. Okay. Symmetry may be this one. So there may be different types of symmetry in the data set, maybe there. Okay. So if you see about the summary statistics, what we go for the measure of the location, means the mean, median. So these we call it as a measure of location, okay, of the data set. And the measure of spread is the variance, standard deviation, range, and interquartile range. These are the measure of spread. Now, once we know about all these basic terminologies or statistical terminologies, what is being used in on most of the climatic studies or in the hydrological studies. Another thing is in the climate change, important thing is the trend analysis. And trend analysis, what we do, we carry out the trend analysis using the Mann-Kendall test. Mann-Kendall test. Okay. So the method of trend analysis, there is one is the method is the trend analysis is the Mann-Kendall test. Okay. It tells about the existence of the trend. And the another one is the sense slope estimator. It gives about the magnitude of the your trend. Okay. So first one, Mann-Kendall test tells about the existence of the trend, and the sense slope tells about the magnitudes of the trend. Now here, to analyze the trend, if you have the long-term temperature series and you want to find out whether this temperature series is having the trend or not, so there are approaches for the computation of the trend. So the non-parametric trend analysis method is Mann-Kendall test, or the MK test we call, then the modified Mann-Kendall test, then the sense slope estimator, and another one is the, if you want to see the shift detection, or the basically we use the Petty's method, okay, and the standard normal homogeneity test we do carry out just to see the change detection, whether some change has taken place in the data series at some point. Okay, so we use the Petty's test. Now here the approach for the trend analysis, Mann-Kendall test, you just see here. So Mann-Kendall test, here it's as I mentioned, it's a non-parametric test. Okay, so what we do, we just find out the sign of the data sets, means what is, whether it's a positive sign or the negative sign, sin xj minus xi, okay, is equal to, its sign is +1 if xj minus xi is greater than 0. Okay, we call it as a +1. Okay, when it is equal to 0, we call it as a 0. On when it's a less than -1, we call the sign as minus. Okay, so plus 0 or minus sign we define. Okay, and then once we define the sign of the data sets, how data is behaving, we compute the variance, and variance is computed by this formula, means what is the difference in the sign, means the how the series is behaving. Okay, whether it is increasing, decreasing, okay, all the data, different data sets. So various sign we compute, positive or negative sign, and from there we compute the variance. Okay. And then here from this one, the variance formula of the variance is n -1 to n plus 5, and this is the t is the tie. How many ties are there? Means the same data are there, equal data sets are there. So we call it as a tie. Okay. So from there we compute the variance of S, and then we compute the Z statistic. Okay. From the Z statistics, we say that whether trend is there, we can say that the trend is there in the data set or not. Okay, so we can define the trend data sets. So this is the simply Mann-Kendall test. I'll show you this test through one example. Then another method is the sense slope estimator. In the sense slope estimator, we just compute, this is the x values, okay, xi minus xk upon j minus k. Okay, we compute the q values. Okay, from there we compute the what is the slope. We simply, it's a slope estimator, so that's why the name is the sense slope estimator. We are simply finding out the slope in the data set. Okay, so then the Mann-Kendall test, your hypothesis is h is 0, the values are randomly ordered in time. So null hypothesis says that the all values are the randomly ordered in time. Okay, and then H1 is, there is a monotonic trend in the time. So if the null hypothesis is rejected, that means your data is having the trend. Okay, and the non-parametric test parameter Z basically depends only on the ranking of the values. Okay, and Z normally distributed when n is greater than 10. So if the n total number of data sets are greater than 10, so Z is normally distributed. and the template calculate two trail test for significance level 0.001, that means the 99.9%, and 0.01 means the 99%, 0.5 that means the 95% significance, and the 0.1 that means the 90% significance. And in this case, in man candle test, if some missing values are there, these are being allowed in the man candle test. You don't have to worry about the missing values. Okay. In case of a sense slope estimator, linear model for the trend is Ft is equal to Qt plus C. Non-parametric, no assumptions about distribution of residuals, but variance of the residuals should be constant in time. And the template calculates sense estimators for Q and its 99% and 95% confidence interval. It's valid when n is equal to greater than 10. And there are not too many ties are there in the data sets. And here in sense slope also, the missing values are allowed. Then we have another method that is called the modified man-candle test. So if your data series is having the correlation, okay, so in those cases we use the modified man-candle test. If there is no correlation is there in the data series, we can go for the man-candle test. In case of the some correlation is exists in the data set, so we go for the modified man-candle test. So the modified man-candle test, this affects the all significant autocorrelation coefficient is removed. So what we do is, first of all significant autocorrelation is being removed from the data set. And for this purpose, the modified variance of the S, designated as variance S, was used as follows. Variance S is equal to Vs upon n by n star, where n star is the effective sample after reviewing all the significant correlations, autocorrelation. And the n by n star ratio was computed directly from the equation proposed by, this is the equation given here. So from this equation, you can just find out the n by n star ratio. Okay. So this way, this modified man-candle test is being used for that purpose. Now I'll just show you some example of this one. Suppose I have some data sets. I'll just X1, then we have X2, then we have X3, then we have X4, X5, then we have X6, then X7. Okay, and the values are, you have the data sets, 7 data sets, 90, 5, you have 830, you have 672, then 6, 6, 7. So what we are using the Mann-Kendall test. Just by hand calculation, I'll show you how it works. 734, because most of you are maybe using the computer programs, okay, and you don't understand how it works. 866, then 799. So these are the 7 values are there. So first of all, you just see. First of all, what we will do, we will try to see what is the sign of the data sets, whether it is increasing or decreasing. So first of all, what we will do, we will subtract all the data sets from the first value. Means we will try to compute x1 minus x2, x1 minus x3, x1 minus x4, x1 minus x5, x1 minus x6, and x1 minus x7. So x1 minus x2 means 9. Sorry, x2 minus x1, x3 minus x1. So x subtract from x2 to x1. So 830 minus 905 is the minus 1. Then 672 minus 905, it's a minus sign. Okay. Then 667 minus 905, again minus sign. 734 minus 905, minus sign. 866 minus 905, minus sign. 799 minus 905, minus sign. Okay. Now similarly, you just go second step, means 6 x3 minus x2, x4 minus x2, x5 minus x2, x6 minus x2, x7 minus x2. Okay, so that means x3 minus x2 means 672 minus 830. It's again minus. Then 667 means x4 minus x2, again it is minus. Then x5 minus x2 means 734 minus 830 is minus. Then x6 minus x2 means 866 minus 830. That's the positive one. Then x7 minus x2, 799 minus 830, it's a negative value. The sign is negative. Now go for the x4 minus x3. x4 minus x3 means 667 minus 672. It's a minus value. Okay. Then x5 minus x3, 734 minus 672 plus 1. Then x6 minus x3, 866 minus 672 plus 1. Then x7 minus x3, 799 plus 742, it's plus 1. Now here again x5 minus x4 means 734 minus 667 plus 1. Then x6 minus x4, 866 minus 667 plus 1. Then x7 minus x4, 799 minus 667 plus 1. Okay. Now x6 minus x5, 866 minus 734 plus 1. Then x7 minus x5, 799 minus 734 plus 1. Okay. Then last is x6 minus x7, x6 minus x7. Okay. Or sorry, x7 minus x6. So x7 minus x6 means 799 minus 866. It's minus 1. Okay. Now just see, add all these data sets. Okay. Here it's minus 1, minus 1, minus 1, minus 2. It's minus 3. Is it okay? Then minus 1, plus 1, plus 1, 0. This one, minus 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, minus 1, 3. And this one, 3 minus 3, 0. Okay. And now the total sum of this one is How much is the total sum? -1, -2, -3, -6 plus 3 minus 3. Okay. So now here in this case, we can write that total n. How many observations are there? 7. Right? What is the S? We have computed. S means this one. Okay. S is basically the total number of positive or negative signs from the data sets. So the total number of signs we got -3. So total -3 signs are there. Then you have how many ties are there? There is no tie. Means that there are no two data are equal. Okay. So ties are 0. Then we have to compute the variance. Variance S. What is the formula of the variance S? Do you remember? Or I'll show you the formula. Or should I write the formula here? I'll write the formula here. Variance S is equal to n minus 1 2n plus 5 minus sigma k is equal to 1 to n tk. Tk is the number of ties. In our case, there is no tie. Okay. Tk minus 1 into 2tk plus 5. So I'll write here 2tk plus 5 divided by 18. Okay. This I have written here. Okay. So now in our case, how we will calculate this one? N is 7. 7 into 7 minus 1, that means 6, plus 2n plus into 2n plus 5. That means 14 plus 5, 19. Okay, 7 into 6 into 19, and this value will be 0 because tk is 0. Okay, minus 0 divided by 18. So solve this one. 7 into 6 into 19 divided by 18. So I'll just solve this one. From your mobile calculator, you can just compute this. How much you are getting? Anybody has calculated?
1.7, sir.
1.7? These are not the minus. These are all into 7 into 7 into 6
44.34.
multiply it. 7 into 6 into 19 divided by 18.
44.33.
Right.
44.33.
44.3. Right?
Yeah.
44.33. So this we are getting. So this is the variance. Okay. Now once you have this variance, so another thing what you have to do. Okay. So you have to compute the Z values, Z statistic. Okay. So Z value, how we compute, I will just show you. Yeah. Z, here I am writing, Z is defined as S minus 1 divided by square root of variance S if S is greater than 0. Okay, and Z is 0 if S is equal to 0, and value is S plus 1 divided by square root of variance if S is less than 0. So in our case, S is less than 0, right? Value of S is minus 3. So we have to take this one, this third one, S plus 1 upon square root of variance S. Okay. So then what is the value is coming? Just compute. Can anybody compute?
minus 0.3
Hmm?
minus 0.30.
Minus 0.3, right? So we are getting value as Z value as minus 0.3, because S you just put minus 3 plus 1 upon square root of variance S. Okay, you'll get the minus 0.3. Okay, so now from the Z statistics, you can just see what is the Z statistics is coming. Okay, and from here you just see whether trend is there in the data set or whether significance is there in the data set. Okay, trend is significant or not. Okay, from here you can just find out. Okay, so these are the basically ways how to find out the trend in the data set. So I'll just 1 second. I'll just share my another screen. Okay, from here you just see level of significance according to the Z statistics. Okay, so here if your value is in between 0 to minus 1.96, so your trend is negative non-significant. Okay, and if it is lesser than minus 1.96, that means it is having a negative trend. So in our case, what is that? Can anybody tell me? Is there trend in the data set or not?
No trends.
Hmm?
Negative non-significant.
Please, anybody? Our Z value, Z statistics is coming minus 0.3.
Non-significant.
Huh? Negative non-significant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this way you can just find out. So manually you can have this one. You can simply compute the significance of the trend. Okay. In case if there are certain ties are there in the data sets, I'll just show another example with the tie in the data set. If your data set is 905, 830, 672, 667, 734, and suppose this one is your, this is suppose I'm just changing this value as the same example. I am changing this value as 672. Okay, I change this x value. Okay, this value I have changed. Now you just see there are tie. There are 2672 values are there in the data set. Okay, one is this one and another one is this one. There are 2672 values are there. Okay, so now in this case, once I am computing the values here, okay, means x3 minus x4 minus 1, x4 minus x3 is minus 1, then x5 minus x4, x3 is plus 1, x5 minus x3, x6 minus x3, that will be 0. Okay, this value is 0. Then it's okay. Then here other values will be the same. So now here in this case, again these values will change because we have changed. So first line is the same. Then the second line here you just see x6 minus x2. x6 minus x2 will be minus 1. This will be minus 1. Similarly here, if you go, this will be 1, means the x6 minus x4 will be a positive. Then x6 minus x5 will be a negative. So these some of these values are going to change because of the one change. So now it will show minus 2. Instead of 3, the value is coming as minus 2. Okay, and now your total, this one will be, this will be and here again it will change, last one also. This one minus 1 minus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 and this one will be a plus 1, not the minus 1. So here also it will change. So this will be plus 2. Okay. Now it is coming, finally the value is coming as minus 6. So now, instead of minus 3, when the tie is there, it is coming as minus 6. Okay, so I'll just change it as a minus 6. Minus 6 is there. Okay. Now you just see in the previous example, this tie we could not use because this t was 0. Okay. But here in this case, how many number of ties are there? How many ties are there?
One.
Small n, one tie is there. Okay. And tk means the first tie. How many ties in the first tie? There are 2. Because 2 data sets are there in the tie. So tk is equal to 2. Okay. If suppose there are 3 data sets, then tk will be 3 in that case. So means n is equal to 1. If suppose there may be 2 data sets. For first one is the 2 ties, there are maybe certain 3 ties are there. So we can say that tk is equal to 3. So like that. Okay. Now in this variance S, this terminology is okay, but instead of 0, now the value will change. There is k to 1. There is only one tie. Okay. K to 1 means from there is only one tie, so n is equal to 1. And tk, what is the value of the tk? Tk is 2. So just I'll change here, draw this, I'll remove the 0 and give the value. So your tk is 2, then tk minus 1 is 2 minus 1 into 2 tk plus 5 means 4 plus 5. Okay. 4 plus 5. 9. This 2 minus 1, 1. 9 into 2, 18. So this minus 18 by 18. Okay. So that means this by 18 minus 18 by 18 minus 1. So this minus 1. So this, the value will be 43.33. So your variance S is equal to 43.33. Now, if you are putting this variance as 43.33 here, okay, and from here, if you are computing the Z value, so Z value will come as, what will be the Z value now? Just compute, please. S plus 1 upon variance, square root of the variance S. Now the variance S is equal to 43.33. And S is equal to minus 6.
Minus 0.759.
It is
Minus 0.759.
minus 0.75 or 76, right? So minus 0.776 or 75 it is coming, right? So this way you can just see. So now you got the Z static, and from the Z statics you can see whether your trend is significant or not. It's a, here again it's a negative trend and it's a non-significant trend. Okay. So if ties are there in the data set, you can compare like that. Okay. Is it clear? Would you follow
So,
the method?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, if we have 3 672s, then what would be the TK value, sir?
If you got 3
672 values.
yes. If there are 3 672s, okay. In that case, your TK value will be 3.
Okay, sir.
Right?
N will be 1.
N will be 1. And suppose in this case, suppose there is 2 672 and there are suppose 3 667 values are there. Suppose if I say that your this 67, 667, there are 367 values are there. Okay. Then in that case, your N will be 2. Okay. So your T1 will be 2 and T2 will be 3. Is it clear? That means there are 2 ties. In our case, right now there is 1 tie. Suppose I'll just tell you. Suppose here, I am not going all these plus minus. Simply I am telling you about the ties. Okay. You can go. Suppose this is again 667 and this one is 667. Okay. So that means how many ties are there? One is the tie of 672 and another tie is the 667 tie. So their number of ties are 2. Okay. And in that case, your in case of the TK, what is that TK? T1, you can say 2, and T2, in case of the T2, there are 3. Means that T1, in case of the first tie, there are 2 elements. In the second tie, there are 3 elements. Right? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? And then once you are using this one in this formula, here k is equal to 1 to n. So in this case, k is equal to 1 to 2. Okay. And in the first tie, you will use the tk minus 1, 2 tk plus 5. In the first case, your tk is equal to 2. Okay. When k is equal to 1, when k is equal to 2, your tk is equal to 3. Okay. So this way, your 2 minus 1, 4 plus 5 plus another terminology will come here in this one plus sorry, 3 minus 1 into 6 plus 5. Okay. So 6 plus 5, 11, 11 into 6, 66. So 18 plus 66, this will come. Okay. So this way you just see, you can use this formula. Is it okay? Is it clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this way you can just find out. Then another thing comes your it is change detection. In the series, is there any changes there in the series? Is there any changes taking place in the series? Again, we use using the sign. Okay, it's again a non-parametric test based on the Petty's method. Okay, but it is given in the 1979. So here again, what we do, we just find out the sign of the data sets, whether it's a positive or negative. Okay, we just add these signs and then we find out the KT value, that is the maximum value of the sign. So again, I'll show you through some example. Then it will be easy to understand. Otherwise, I'll just open an Excel file here. Give me it in Excel file. You just see. Here, suppose I have these n values. Is it visible? These are the n values. Okay. Suppose these are the data sets, and I want to see the trend in this data sets. Whether your some change point is there, trend is changing, means suppose sometimes the trend is increasing, then it is decreasing, or trend is decreasing, then it is increasing. So at certain point, the change has taken place. Okay, change in the trend has taken place. Okay, so we want to find out we want to detect the change in the data sets. Okay, so what we are doing, we are simply finding out what is the sign of the data sets. Means what we are doing, we are simply subtracting this value from the all data sets. Means minus 1.05 minus 1.05. Okay, just see, I'll just increase that one size. Minus 1.05 minus 1.05 is 0. Minus 1.05 minus 0.96, that is the minus sign. That is the minus sign. Then minus 1.05 minus 0.58, again minus sign. So likewise, we have simply subtracted all the values. Okay, from all of the values, we have subtracted the first values, and we have simply mentioned what is the sign of those data sets. Then similarly, second value we have subtracted from all the values. Then the third values we have subtracted, and we have simply mentioned the sign of the values. Okay, whether it's a negative signature or the positive signature. If it is having positive signature, then added all these signature. Okay, negative sign or the positive sign. So here, in first case, we are getting the minus 35, means the 35 values are negative. Then here 11 positive signs are there, negative signs are there, 20 negative signs are there. So likewise, we means 11 positive signs are there, 20 positive signs are there, minus 1 negative sign is there. So likewise, we have the different signs, whether they are positive or negative, we have computed. Okay, now, so according to the Petty's formula, it says that we have to compute the sign from j is equal to 1 to t. What is the sign between xt minus xj? So this we have computed xt minus xj. What is the sign? Okay, and summation of all those things. So we have done. Then after that, what we have done, we have used another formula given by the Petty's. That is basically what we are doing. We are just aggregating all these signs. So minus 35 plus 11. Okay, go on adding. So it is minus 24 plus 20 minus 4 minus 4 minus 1 minus 5 minus 5 minus 31 minus 36 minus 36 minus 17 minus 53. Okay, minus 53 minus 39 minus 92. Okay, then the minus 92 minus 27 minus 119, okay, and minus 119 minus 25 minus 144, then minus 144 plus 2 minus 142, minus 142 minus 8 minus 150 plus 9 minus 141 minus 15 minus 156, then minus 156 minus 37 minus 193. Likewise we are getting, okay, similarly plus 23 minus 170 minus 33, it's minus 203, then the minus 29 minus 232, then plus 32 we are getting the minus 200, then plus 15 minus 185, you just see, minus 172 minus 135 minus 115 minus 138 minus 109, likewise, and likewise we have all these data sets, okay, 0. So here again another formula of Pettis says that what is the maximum value of the KT. So the maximum value of the KT is coming as minus 232. Out of these values, the maximum KT value that is getting with the negative sign, we are getting the minus 32. So the minus 32 is coming at the 17th data sets. Okay, the 17th data set is giving the minus 232 value. So that means the change is taking place at the 17th value. Okay, so once you are detecting the change, that means that at the 17th value, that you can say that the change detection has taken. You have found the change detection at the 17th data point. Okay, so that is basically your change detection. Right? Is it clear?
Yes.
I think very few participants are there. Others are not responding, or they are not able to understand.
Understand, sir.
Understanding? Okay. Now I'll show you another example. Sense slope estimator. Okay. If your data set, the same data set is there, x1, x2, x7, means the 905, 830, 672, 667, 734, 866, 79, 799. Okay, so this is the, it says that Ti is equal to xj minus xk upon j minus k. Okay, from here you just find out what is the sense estimator. Okay, so here what we are doing, we are subtracting C85, means this one x2 minus x1. Okay, and the distance between these two data sets is 1 divided by 1. Similarly, this one x3 minus x1 divided by 2, x4 minus x1 divided by 3, x5 minus x b5 means divided by 4 means xj minus xk divided by j minus k. What is the number of the data sets? Okay, means jth number and the kth number. Likewise, you just go and divide, and then you are getting these values. Okay, then just see how many negative and positive values are there. Okay, so here from here you just see minus 75, 116.5, minus 79.3, 42.8, 10.8, 17.6, minus 148.0, okay, 81.5, 32.0, 9.0, minus 6.2. Okay, likewise you just have all these things. So once you apply this one, you can just have a plot of these data sets. Okay, from plot also you can just find out the regression equation, y is equal to mx plus c. Okay, it says that minus 6.5714 plus x plus 13951. Okay, from here you just see, you can just estimate that how much slope is there in the data set. So it's a negative slope is there in the data set. So you can estimate the slope of the data set simply by the regression equation. Okay, so it gives the magnitude of the data sets. But from the your Mann-Kendall test, it says whether your trend is significant or not. You just see trend is there in the data set, but the Mann-Kendall says that this trend is not significant trend. Okay, so both these things, the combination of these things, you will be able to know whether it's a significant trend. If it's a significant trend, then how much is the magnitude of the trend, and if it is non-significant, even then what is the magnitude of the trend. So this way you can just find out the trend in the data set. Okay, is it okay? So this is all what I wanted to tell you.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, magnitude, how to calculate the magnitude, sir? In that. And
Magnitude is simply you just see once you have, so here you just fit the regression equation and the slope of the regression equation, you can just say that that's the magnitude of the thing. Okay, from there you once you have plotted that one, from there you can just find out the slope of the line that gives the magnitude of the slope, right?
okay.
So this all I wanted to tell you about the basic about the climate change. And sometimes most of you might be using directly the formulas for Mann-Kendall test, okay, for change detection. So just I wanted to give you the basics about them, how it works. Okay. Give you the basic understanding about that.
Okay, so thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
So there is one question in the chat box. It says, what do you mean by parametric and non-parametric?
Parametric and non-parametric.
Uh,
So non-parametric, when we are not using the absolute values, so these are the non-parametric. So here in this case, you just see we have used only the sign of the data sets. Okay, either it's a negative or positive sign we have used. We have not used the magnitude of the data set. So non-parametric are the methods where we are not using the exact values. We are using the sign of the data set. When we are using the values, so these are the parametric tests, right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
I still doubt, like, what is the difference between Mann-Kendall test and Sense-Slope method? So is there
You just see Mann-Kendall
the
test
magnitude
tells
in
you about
Sense-Slope
the
method?
trend, okay, means whether trend exists or not, okay, and sense slope test tells you the magnitude of the trend. That is the basic difference. So in Mann-Kendall test, you won't get the magnitude of the trend. So you simply know that the trend is there in the data set, whether it's either it's a positive trend or a negative trend. Okay, so suppose for future, if you want to say that from the data set that how much deviation is there, once you say that the in the last century 0.5 degree change is there in the data set, so you won't get in the Mann-Kendall test that thing.
Mann-Kendall test, yes.
You will be able to know that only the trend was there, whether it is a positive trend or the negative trend. But the sense law will tell you whether 0.5 degree, 0.6 degree, 0.7 degree temperature change was there in the data sets. Okay, so it gives the magnitude of that.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Got it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, sir, for a nice presentation.
Thank you.
This actually gives a lot of introduction that we will be discussing tomorrow. And I think this will be the last session for today. I'd like to thank you, sir, for taking your time off and giving us the lecture. Any other questions from the participants? If you have, you can send us a WhatsApp message or in the chat box tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.